welcome to Frank Hobbs. Good morning.
Good morning, Deacon. How are you?
Are you doing the engineering as well as being
I am.
interviewed?
Double duty, yes, ma'am. We
Oh
got
my
this.
goodness! And you've got your cap on,
I
and
do.
my good, can you hear me?
Loud and clear. Can you hear me good?
Yeah,
Amen.
that's fine. That's very good. So I understand that your project,
Yes.
project that you're working on with one of the elected officials, is something that you want to talk about.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank
And
you.
I want to hear about it,
Thank you.
of course.
Thank you,
Yes.
Deacon. Yes, I'm so excited about what God is doing. State Representative Nika El Ugardo, who, interesting enough, is actually also now running for the Senate seat. That's what's very interesting. So she's presently a state representative. She wrote the legislation, H 4140 is the number, and it's presently sitting in the House. That's my last understanding of it, and we're hopeful that it could pass the House to the Senate. But this
Right.
is the ballot box initiative for the Suffolk County House of Correction, both Nashua and Suffolk County House of Correction. So we're believing it's going to pass through. Again, I need to connect with her, but the good news is this is something that she's really, really aggressively championing as something that she's really, really just aggressively wanting this legislation to pass, and we're talking to the various folks to see who she needs to talk to, who might be reluctant to be able to get their support to be able to get it passed.
So what does the House order actually interpret into?
So, I mean, it just, I'm sorry, Gigi, your question is, what does the House interpret?
What does it interpret into? What's it about?
Okay, so thank you. So the ballot box initiative essentially will build infrastructure for returning citizens to be able to exercise their right to vote. So essentially, it'll be a mobile ballot box. So we have drop ballot boxes, right? So there's drop boxes that happen with elections to be, particularly in the period of COVID, for people to be safe. Not have this, so that's another option that people can be able to cast their ballot in a ballot box, drop boxes all throughout the city. And for the first time, this both primary as well as the final municipal election, they had for the very first time in the Suffolk County House of Correction and the Nashua County Jail in its lobbies, drop boxes.
Okay.
So that's progress because that never happened before. So the correctional officers, the staff, as well as the returning citizens had up to 8 p.m. that day to be able to get their ballots in the lobby, just like everybody else can. So that's progress. With that said, they need if you're incarcerated, obviously, the CO or somebody has to be able to allow you to get access from your cell to the lobby or get your ballot from you to deposit it in that box. So though that's progress, it's not optional. So what we need to do is we need a ballot box that actually will go unit to unit, right? And it's much more aggressive, that will go literally from cell to cell to be able to give them the opportunity. They almost have to opt out of the opportunity to be able to vote, as opposed to they have to be aggressive to be able to push through and hope that you'll be kind enough to be able to deposit their ballot into even though we go in and we go from cell to cell to be able to complete the applications, and the city hall will mail the ballot to you. It still has to get from them to the box.
Right.
Right. So the goal is that this ultimately will be a very aggressive ballot box, and we'll be able to measure this. We already are seeing increased numbers as a result of us going in and being aggressive and going cell to cell and making sure that a person's not actually serving time. If they're at South Bay, they potentially could be serving a felony conviction unbeknownst to them, and we've had to check to make sure that if their intent is to vote and they are serving a felony conviction and they're not cognizant of that, they will incur another felony, and we don't want that.
I know we don't want anything else to happen. Yeah, of course. And you and I have both been inside the facility,
Yes.
and we have gone from cell to cell.
Yes.
So we have seen exactly what the distance is between the cells. We know quite a bit about the physical layout of the
facility.
So we know that it's possible for this to be able to be managed
Absolutely.
by a correctional officer easily.
Absolutely. And Sheriff Tompkins is very supportive of this, which is really exciting, as the only sheriff of color in the entire Commonwealth, and again, the only sheriff that has even allowed people to come in.
Right. Oh,
You okay?
I'm fine. I'm just feeling like
Yes.
I know him,
Yes.
and I've met him, and I've talked with
Yes,
him,
yes.
and I agree with you that he's the only person who is a sheriff in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts that is interested in doing the kinds of things that we approach him about.
Yes.
And he's the only black man as well.
Can you imagine? And the thing is, so during COVID, he allowed us to come in, though we had to scale it down, myself and maybe one volunteer, as opposed to a team of us that did pre-COVID.
Right.
Many sheriffs were not allowing people to come in pre-COVID. Certainly not during COVID. That just gave them an excuse to do what they didn't want to do pre-COVID.
I know. I've been in all of the facilities, the smaller facilities. I've been in all of the state prisons as well, which you may not have been in.
I have not.
But the ones we're talking about, the correctional centers, we've been in there. We've been exactly right in front of every single cell.
Yeah.
I mean, I have stood in front of a cell
Yes.
and knocked on the door
Yes.
and asked the person on the inside a question and
Yes.
received an answer.
Yes.
So things have been very different in Thompson's situation, and he's actually very active in the Sheriff's Association as well. But he's just the most willing
Yes.
person
Yes.
to allow people to do better
Yes.
than when they arrived.
It's true. He says, I believe this is a quote right here on Boston Praise Radio and TV Network. He says he believes that it is unconscionable to prevent a returning citizen their basic right to vote.
Exactly.
And that's not the sentiment of many other sheriffs across the Commonwealth, which is why this ballot box initiative is going to be so important, because he, as you said, he's actually the president of the Association of Sheriffs.
Right.
So currently, and so as the president of the association, hopefully, and this year, 2022, is the election for the sheriffs, because that's an elected position.
Right.
So the hope is that this ballot box initiative will be an incentive for other sheriffs throughout the Commonwealth to also take on this model of building this infrastructure for returning citizens to exercise their most basic right to participate in democracy, which is voting. And so what's really exciting, in addition, is the Nashua County Jail. Everyone who's there is waiting pre-trial. So everyone there is eligible, and they have the capacity to house up to 500 people in that space. Actually, both respectively, about 500 in both places. But the difference at Nashua is everyone there, it's a jail. So they're waiting pre-trial. None have been sentenced. So the entire population is eligible, even if they were people who have a felony conviction and they've served their time. They're now there. They're eligible.
Well, I can remember when you went in with the applications for people to apply for the
Absentee ballot application?
the applications to be mailed to them.
Yes.
Because they didn't understand that they were eligible for something.
That's right.
And that was critically important for them to know.
It is true. So the education, you're right, Deacon Eve, as you know, has been even for correctional officers. And as you said, when you've gone with me, and I remember vividly in one particular case, an Italian correctional officer, and as you are Italian, and you were like paisan, and
Yeah.
you were able to build that, to help foster that relationship, and then be able to also educate them, because many of them were saying, "Oh, they can vote. The correctional officers don't know they have this right."
I remember the first time that I went in with you to do the registration of absentee ballots and registration of voting, whatever the application was. I can remember that I would be talking to the inmates,
Yes.
and the correctional officer would come up right behind me, and then he would, when I finished talking, he would say, "Okay, lady, what are you talking about? Is that really true?" And they're telling me that with a kind of attitude like, "I don't believe that that's true.
Right.
Why are you saying this?"
Right.
And I had to try to convince them that it was true, that it was legal, and that what we were doing was correct.
Yes.
And so I had to do it on a regular basis for the correctional officers, because then they would follow me around in the in the location to make sure that, number one, that I wasn't doing anything I shouldn't do,
Yes.
and that I was safe,
Yes.
which was important.
Yes.
That was something they needed to do.
Sure.
But I felt very active and able to help people find out that they were, in fact, eligible to apply.
Yes. Yes.
And that was before
COVID.
this other thing happened, yes.
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 And one of the things that was really interesting was, again, I just find it amazing how the sovereignty of God. So in the process of doing what we were doing, we learned via a young lady, Rakia Edwards, one of the clerks, one of the only woman of color inside the city hall elections department.
Yes.
She became the point person that would say, well, this person needs to do this and do this. We go back and forth, where other people would just quickly be able to say, "Oh, throw it out." So you have a lot of latitude in those places to be able to say, it's just are you aggressive to make sure that their ballot, they are able to, or is your mindset, what can I find to say, let's reject it?
Right.
And so she was really good that we go back and forth, that we got to make sure that, one, if they live in another municipality and they're there, we want to be able to send their registration to their respective city hall, that they can then be able to send the ballot to them from their respective city.
I know, and that's important, because not everybody that's in the Suffolk County facility comes from Suffolk County.
Absolutely. And they have the right, because the other thing is, though, they may come from another place. Some are homeless. And so they can use the facility where they're at as their address.
Correct.
And that's important because here, if you say you're at the Suffolk County House of Correction, particularly with what's happening on Mass and Cass, as they call it, we call it Miracle Mile, but that many people, they either are there and they get caught up in that and they end up inside, or they're inside and on their way out, they get caught up in that maze in terms of mental illness and addiction and all those other kinds of things. But the point is, now these are people who are here, who are from all across the Commonwealth, and some folks even from out of state.
Yes.
But the point is, they should be able to participate, particularly voting for the mayor, voting for the governor. If you're housed here, utilizing resources from here, then certainly you should be able to advocate to elect whom you think is going to be a person who is going to put policies in place to address your need, so that you're not just housed there and you're just and counted in the census as a person who's there, particularly places across the Commonwealth that are facilities that are prisons, where again the census is going to count you. Resources are going to be allocated because you're housed there, but when you leave to go someplace else, those resources are still going to be allocated for when you were incarcerated.
As you say, if any of them are in fact legally homeless, they might end up being sent to the shelter in Boston, which is also in
Boston.
Right, in Boston.
So why should you not have the opportunity to vote for the mayor, particularly with this critical election that we had
Exactly.
for the mayor? So it was really important, and we were also able to give them not just the information, not just the access, but to give them the information, like what's your platform? So we
Right.
were able to get information from literature, both from the Wu camp as
Right.
well as from the Asabi George camp. And a specific plan, what is your plan with regard to reentry? So we were able to give that information to every returning citizen so they could not just exercise their right to vote, but make an intelligent, informed decision with who you should vote for that's aligned to the policies and the programs that you need to be able to not recidivate.
Yes, to come back.
Yes.
Yeah, we don't want to see people coming back.
No, we don't want that.
Yeah, we want to see them understand their legal rights to the degree that they'll be able to stay on the outside.
Yes.
And live on the outside and perhaps get a job on the outside.
Yes.
And not recividate, not
Yes.
to go back in.
Yes.
That's critically important. You and I have talked about that for years. And of course, I have been involved with CURE since 1978.
Wow.
Yeah, with Sullivan. Yeah, a long time.
Yes.
A long time. Yeah.
That's great work, and we're so pleased to be able to support you in that effort and the great work that.
Yeah, and you're on the board.
And humbled to have the opportunity to do that.
Yeah,
Both Eric and
yeah.
I.
You and Eric.
Yes.
You and Eric Kennedy, right through the window here. We might be able to see him.
Yes.
But he's important
He is.
as well,
He is.
because unfortunately 2 of our other board members have passed away.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, Dan Janey
Yes.
and Roy.
Wow.
I mean, that's amazing.
It is.
It's amazing
It
that
is.
should have happened.
Yes.
I mean, I still can't believe it happened.
It is hard
because
to believe.
I was friends with him for over 30 years.
Wow.
But it's amazing that
Yes.
those kinds of things can happen.
It is.
And this is why people on the inside depend on people like you and me
Yes.
to make sure that some positive information is brought to them
Yes.
and some physical information is brought to them so
Yes.
that they can do something to benefit themselves
Yes.
in some way.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
So I'm encouraging people to please to call your state representative, call your senators to be able to encourage them to support this ballot box initiative bill. H4140 is the number, as we wanted to quickly get through the House, pass the Senate, for the governor to sign it, for it to become law, that this will be a ballot box initiative that we
Exactly.
can implement and see qualitative, documentate outcomes that will show the effectiveness of this, that you're seeing people become engaged, that we can replicate that through all 14 counties throughout the Commonwealth.
And I can anticipate that there might be other sheriffs that wouldn't have the encouragement that the sheriff has.
Absolutely so.
Yeah.
Absolutely so.
So it's really important to make sure that we provide the support for this one, because he's the one that's active.
Yes.
He cares.
Yes.
And he's allowing us to participate
Yes.
in his 2 facilities right there.
Yes, yes. And so the other thing I wanted to share with you, so as a result of doing that in this most recent municipal election that was so, I don't know, the whole nation was looking at this municipal election
Right.
because it's the first time in the history of the city of Boston that all of the candidates were people of color.
Yes.
So the whole nation was looking, and this whole time that we're talking about on the heels of George Floyd and equity and Black Lives Matters. In fact, we had people whom actually took themselves out of it because they felt that it was important, or people who were gonna run for it who said, let me pause and let other folks go. In fact, it became all women of color.
Right.
Not just
Right.
people of color, but women of color, because there was a male of color who decided to step out to allow the women, and ultimately we now have the first woman mayor of the city of Boston.
I know, that's
elected,
incredible.
and the first person of color to be. So 2 ceilings were
I
shattered.
know it. It's just amazing because I shall never forget all the years that I have preceded you in the Boston area, because I was born in Boston. But all of the times that I have elected somebody, it's always been a white man.
Yes.
Every single time, whether it was local or national, it was a white man.
Yes.
And this year, there was this change
Yes.
that occurred
Yes.
that was so interesting.
Yes.
And the new mayor
Yes.
was a woman
Yes.
who is part black, part Asian,
Yes.
and her name is Michelle Wu.
Yes.
So
Yes.
we've got to encourage her.
We have to encourage her because,
Yeah.
quite candidly, I'm hearing that she's getting death threats. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
We're hearing people are protesting and alleging to be, communists. I mean, just horrible things because of people's fear of just, of challenging the status quo. People feeling a sense of a loss of what their perceived power.
Right.
And it's just unfortunate. So we do have to pray for her. We have to support her, as well as District Attorney Rachel Rollins. They're trying not to give her the protections that she's
Right.
entitled to as in this position of an attorney representing Massachusetts for the entire United States.
I know it's really critically important that she's supported because of everything we've been saying about her.
Yes.
But the fact of the matter is that she's not a white man.
No.
And the other thing that people may have not remembered was that for 8 years she was an intern for the former mayor, Menino.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, you're talking about Michelle Wu, Mayor Wu.
Yes.
Yes.
Mayor Wu.
Yes.
Mayor Wu
Yes.
was, for 8 years, his intern
Yes.
when she was a young person.
Yes.
And she worked in his office for
Yes.
8 years. And he
Yes.
was the first Italian that was a mayor in the city of Boston.
Wow.
So that was that. If you mention Italians,
Right,
that's something for us to say. It's important.
It's important.
It is
Yes,
important.
yes,
It
yes.
is important.
Yes.
Yes.
So we do have to support when we're shattering these ceilings and the status quo that's intimidated or threatened by that, and then they're saying every step along the way they're getting death threats, and then you make an accomplishment where you get the position, and now they're saying, okay, you got the position, but we're going to withhold some of the benefits that come with that, i.e. protection. So we've got to stand up and say, I'm hopeful that Congresswoman Presley and Senator Elizabeth Warren and, folks will be able to say, you've got to give the protections to these women of color that you would give to the men who are white that came with that position.
Exactly.
All the more so they need it because of the fact that there are many people who are not pleased with the fact that these ceilings are being shattered.
Well, even whether they're male or female, I mean, if they're male black elected officials, they need support as well.
Yes, everybody needs support. So those are things that and with that happening, the fact that and to see that so many positions are happening and they're happening so quickly, right? So here where we now, District Attorney Rachel Rollins has been appointed post being elected the first woman district attorney of color ever. So she shattered that, and that was she was really not the heir apparent. This was the person whom people didn't perceive would be, but because of her policies of talking about getting people the services that they need rather than incarcerating, rather than, people. So, and that was all twisted and people were threatened because, again, they wanted to maintain the status quo. If you're dealing with mental illness and addiction, you need treatment, not incarceration.
Right.
And so that's all she was saying. And many people on Mass and Cass or Miracle Mile are struggling with addiction and mental illness, and they need treatment. And so Mayor Wu now and Mayor Janey that preceded her as the acting mayor, because
Yes.
our elected mayor Marty Walsh was appointed to be the U.S. Secretary of Labor. So
In Washington.
in Washington.
Yes,
So when
yes.
that happened, then she ascended up into that position, and she aggressively started to address the atrocity of what's happening over on Mass and Cass. And Mayor Wu has picked up that mantle, and
Yes.
now they are housing people. In fact, I understand they have recently opened up a brick and mortar empowerment center directly next door to the Suffolk County House of Correction, where you can come in. There was a tent that they had, but now that tent has been moved to a brick and mortar space that you can come inside. It's a beautiful place where they've got, you can be able to use the laptop, have access to technology. You can come if you're homeless, sit down there, and you will leave there being housed, not a wait list. Immediately, you will be housed. And that's the stability that you need then to be able to get the other services that you need, whether it's substance abuse or mental health or a combination of whatever it
Right.
is, to get the services now that you're stabilized. And so I'm so pleased to hear this aggressive work, because we've needed a state of emergency healing and empowering movement, what I call, for a long
Right.
time.
I know.
And so we're pleased that some of the legislation, again, will be coupled, will impact what is happening, because we want, when we go into people, and as people exercise their right to vote, they're able to vote for people like Mayor Wu, or vote for people like State Representative Nika El Ugardo or State Representative Liz Miranda. These are all women whom are aggressively addressing prison reform, as
Right.
well as District Attorney Rachel Rollins. And they will tell you that the way they got there is for entities like the African American Coalition. These are advocates who are incarcerated, who are
Exactly.
advocating from behind the walls
Exactly.
to their family members who are outside who can vote, to be able to vote for the people who are going to support policies and programs
Right.
that will help them, one, to come out to the services that they need, and or prevent people from going in the first place, because they're addressing the issues that underlie people's behavior, as opposed to criminalizing people who are the victims of systems that set them up to do just what they do.
Right. That's correct. And it's wrong.
It's wrong.
It's wrong. And we know it's wrong, and they know it's wrong. And the problem is that when they don't have any support on the outside, and if they're released early, or
Yes.
they're released and their case is heard at court, and they're not returned to the facility, they could end up just being returned because they had nowhere to go.
Had nowhere to go.
It's amazing.
It's amazing. And so the wonderful thing about what's happening with this is there's the Empowerment Center that's built there now, and there's also the Roundhouse Hotel that they're now utilizing. I
Right.
think 60 units, I think, are there.
I know.
For people to be able to, and they're looking to do that for a couple of year lease, because the treatment is long term. You can't. This is not a quick fix.
Right.
And so I'm so pleased to hear that the mayor, our mayor Wu, as well, and is working with, because this is not just a Boston problem. So they're
Right.
talking about being able to have a regional kind of
Exactly.
a strategy. But let's immediately address this into the encampments that are happening there. I haven't been there most recently, but I'm hearing that they're looking to be able to get all those encampments out. That is just, anybody who's ever gone over there, it's just breaks. There aren't words to even express.
Oh,
It's
I know.
inhumane.
And as a person who worked in the Department of Mental Health for 50 years, and 28 of my years within that period of time, I worked with people who were in the state facilities. I provided drug counseling. But the fact of the matter is that once people were released, I would encourage them to register to vote and I would try to follow them wherever they ended up when they were released from prison. And I was able to refer them to a Department of Mental Health program or another program that they were eligible for and that they needed. But now there's just nothing available for anybody unless something like this takes place.
Yes. And so there's so many. I'm so excited to hear that these things are happening. Another state representative that was elected that's helping us with this kind of comprehensive strategy is oh, help me, Holy Spirit, is, oh Lord, I have her face right in my head. It'll come to me. But this representative, what she has filed is legislation for returning citizens to be able to get their mass ID upon coming out of incarceration.
I know that's another problem because people who were released didn't have an identification, and that when they went to apply for a position, they didn't have anything that had their name on it or their picture on it or their address on it. Nothing.
Maybe you get your prison ID. That's not going to help you.
Yeah.
Right? So it's again, it's ridiculous to think that you would come out of incarceration and not have the basic. I mean, you're in a city facility. Why couldn't you not coordinate with the registry of motor vehicles?
Exactly.
To be able to make sure that all your documents are in place while you're there, that upon coming out, you at least have that so that you can be able to then build and build upon that.
Right.
So Brandy Fluker Oakley is her name. State Representative Brandy Fluker Oakley. She wrote the legislation.
Right.
To make sure.
Well, it's interesting that the activity of the elected officials who are working for something we think is so necessary are women.
And women of color.
Yes, that is incredible.
And that's the commonality. So it's exciting to see that black women, these women of color, get it as, and this is something that they're passionate about. They're writing legislation, right? And they know it's real to them. It's not something that's abstract. It's touched their lives until they see it and they have a passion and they have the expertise.
Well, and they also know that in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, there's something like 13% black Americans.
Yes.
But those who are incarcerated are in the 60+%.
Yes.
What does that tell you?
Racism is alive and well. And they know that because they live it.
Exactly.
They live it. It's not abstract for their lives. And so I so appreciate that these women are women who are our sisters, who are our mothers, right? And they have that heart, and they have a passion, and what do they call it? Mama bears. They talk about.
I know it. They have relatives. They have relatives who, when they were children, were incarcerated because they were black.
Yes.
So now they decided that they're in a position that they can do something, and they're beginning to do it.
They are doing it.
Yes.
I mean, these are lawyers, people who know how to do the legislation.
Exactly.
So with their expertise and their training, they're now able to have that passion, fuel that, to be able to really address, because we've got plenty of statistics that can talk about the problem.
Right.
But it's exciting to be able to see now that you've got people who are addressing the problem, and we're going to see different outcomes.
Right.
And these are mothers who have sons, who have husbands, who have fathers, and understand that the family is broken up, right?
Yes.
And so it's an exciting time, and it's so important, again, our most fundamental right to be able to vote.
Exactly.
And folks who are incarcerated, those being released from incarceration, and people who've never been incarcerated, that they would aggressively push these innovative pieces of legislation that we need are the varying multiple pieces to really be able to change what we're experiencing.
And the other thing too, that the implication of the type of law or rule that somebody is trying to encourage to be passed related to benefit people who were incarcerated or who are released from incarceration. That's critically important for whatever they're doing in the facility. It's related.
It's related.
It's related, and they know it because they're living it.
Yes.
They're living in the facility. They know what happened to them when they were incarcerated.
Yes.
They know what happened to them wherever they were assigned.
Yes.
And they want to not only help themselves, but they want to help other people who've been treated the same way.
That's right. That's right. That's right. So yeah, it's an exciting time to see this movement that is happening to be able to address our brothers and sisters and our family, our loved ones who've been underserved, who've been marginalized, who've been the victims, who've been struggling. And so I'm really pleased and excited and encourage other folks to support this critical work that's happening right here in the city of Boston and the state of Massachusetts, and support entities like CURE as well as these pieces of legislation that are going to help. And so when people come out of incarceration, one of the fundamental things that you need, again, is housing. Housing is healthcare, right? And from that place, they're able to get all the other things that they need, as well as employment. So we're working aggressively with the Office of Returning Citizens. Bob Turner is the director as it stands, and we're advocating, myself and the returning citizens whom I'm speaking to, that Bob Turner, who was the assistant, and now he is the director, while they are looking to be able to put a permanent person in place, that it should actually be him, who is a returned citizen, long-term recovery, and has a passion to really address this particular population, and knows what it takes to be able to do that because of his lived experience.
I know he has the knowledge and the experience.
Yes.
Yeah.
Those are the two things that you need that are foundational.
Exactly.
You can have education, you can be appointed, you can have charisma and a whole lot of other kinds of things.
Right.
But if it's not your lived experience,
exactly,
then you really don't have the ability and what I call the anointing to be able to be effective in being able to empower this population. And the Office of Returning Citizens model that was created in DC that we are supposed to be replicating, the criteria is that it has to be run by a returned citizen.
Yes, yes.
And that was not the case here in Boston initially.
Right.
So, and now it is in the interim while they are looking to find who's going to be the person who's going to be, in fact, placed in that. And so, again, we're advocating for it to be, not to be interim, but for him, he's been operating in that capacity as the assistant. We've worked with him intimately, Eric, myself, and working to be able to have returning citizens and the church folks and people whom are willing to volunteer to give $25 as a sponsor for that fee that it costs to be able to have a person to get their mass ID.
Right.
Eric would have to often go pick them up, bring them from point A to point B, have access on the computer that they might not have access to be able to complete and to make an appointment, because during COVID you had to physically make an appointment. You can't just go. So, and how to navigate to even to be able to get the ID. You need a birth certificate. You need your social security card. These are documents that they may not have.
I know it. And they probably can't get their social security card replaced easily.
No,
not at all.
Some folks locally, they don't know how to do it. They don't have transportation. They don't know how to do it. They and to get from point A to point B, if you don't have money, how are you going to get from point A to point B? So these things are things that you need. And I will say that I believe the Empowerment Center is supposed to be a place that once however you get there, that they are able to get you the housing. You do have access to technology. You will have access to resources, and hopefully they'll have their finger on the pulse of what are the resources. How do you access those resources that you're able to get your Social Security?
And I'm hoping that someone from Social Security and someone from the
Registry of Motor Vehicles.
Registry of Motor Vehicles. I mean, those are the actual types of identifications that you need to present when you're applying for a job.
Anything, yes,
Yeah.
yes. And so our hope is, as you said, that there'll be representatives from those respective entities inside this empowerment center.
Exactly.
So it's a one-stop place that you can be able to get the fundamental things that you need to build upon to be a productive, contributing citizen in our society.
Yeah. Can you imagine what it would be like if everyone who thought they might have to live in a tent on a sidewalk could actually live in a room in a brick building that was heated and
Have showers, right? Like the dignity of bathing in privacy,
that
and even your normal bodily functions, that you can do that in the security as opposed to on the street in a alley.
Yeah, exactly. And the other part of it would be if somebody would come to them and say, by the way, I can identify you by way of Social Security or by way of the Registry of Motor Vehicles. If that could be done,
Yes.
if someone that represented those two major agencies
Yes.
could appear at the building and help them, that would make a phenomenal difference with their ability to get a job.
Absolutely. And to be able to say to them, even with the jobs, to have relationships with entities that we know are Corey friendly, right? Or Sorry friendly, that will be able to say that you've got the relationship with those entities as well.
Right.
So that quickly you're able to create a needs assessment and a treatment plan
Right.
that's tailored, not a one size fits all,
Yeah.
but that's tailored to the specific individual that you can help them to address all the things that they need to address, short term and long term.
I know, and I'm thinking to myself that when I go to the National House or to what's the other one that
National County Jail or the Suffolk County Correction?
House of Correction?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
If I go to that one, I have to show my Registry of Motor Vehicles ID.
Yes.
And I have to put it. I have to lock it in a little mailbox.
Yes.
That they give me the right to lock my private information into.
Yes.
But I couldn't even be able to go into the facility and do the work that you and I do there
Yes.
if I didn't have my ID.
It's true.
And if I didn't have the ability to be allowed to come into the facility.
It's true. It's true. It's true. The basic thing that will say a legal document being your mass ID to be able to say, this is who I am.
Right.
Fundamental. I mean, it's again unconscionable.
We take it for granted. We take it for
Yes.
granted because I haven't been arrested. You haven't been arrested. So we know other people in our family who have.
Yes.
But we know that whenever we have asked to produce our ID, we've produced it
Sure.
because we have it.
Sure.
But it hasn't occurred to us that there's a time when we don't have something
Yes.
to identify ourselves. I can't imagine.
I can't imagine either. And
I
and those are
can't.
things that then cause you to just exist
Right.
and then revert back to what you know.
Right.
And then you're going to be back. It's a vicious cycle.
Right.
And the only thing that can break that cycle is being able to help people to, one, identify who they are and to be able to, and to treat them humanely, right?
Right.
To give them all the things that they need.
Oh, you want humane treatment in addition. Oh my
Imagine
goodness.
that.
Oh my goodness. Now you're putting a big price on it.
Okay.
No.
And, I often hear you say, Deacon, that, for those who are not concerned about returning citizens and feel like, you got what you deserve, you did something wrong. That's not always the case. In many instances, we know that it's been proven people have been convicted and people have even been put to death that they have found out after the fact was not guilty of what they were charged.
There have been people who have been executed
Yes.
throughout the country
Yes.
who were not guilty of the
Correct.
crime that they were convicted of.
Absolutely.
And they've been convicted and killed.
And executed, and you can't bring. Oh, we're sorry. Oops. You can't bring that person back.
That's right.
You know, and we know that via DNA and people testifying and other things that there are people whom have served long periods of time, and now it's been also proven definitively they didn't do it,
Right.
and they've been released. You can't regain that time.
You can't, because sometimes if someone, for example, now that cannabis is legal,
Yes.
when it was
Illegal.
illegal,
Yes.
and some people had a supply of it, and they
Yes.
were arrested and put in prison.
Yes.
Some of them have done 10, 20, 25 years.
Correct.
Because what they did was illegal
At that time.
at that time. Now,
Yes.
it's legal.
Yes.
So guess what?
What?
They're still doing time.
Yes, yes, and or if they've been released, then their records have not been expunged or sealed.
Right.
So still, even if they've been released, because okay, we now have changed the law, they're not they're not sealing those records. So there's still a stigma
Right.
for those people whom have that on their record.
Exactly.
And so that's why again it's so important for people to engage politically and to vote and to be aware of these issues and challenges. But what I was getting ready to say, that you always say, so even if you have the mindset that you're there because you deserve to be there, and they're not concerned about those people, you should be concerned about what it's costing you as a taxpayer to be able to incarcerate people. So if no other reason, if you the humane piece and you're feeling that they
Right.
deserve that, even from a financial piece, you as a taxpayer are paying for people to be incarcerated and these institutions. So it's still costing you, even if you're not concerned about the individual and being them treated humanely. You should be concerned about your own resources.
So even if you don't care about someone who's incarcerated, you don't care about anything we're talking about in terms of developing support for people to be able to vote, you want to be able to say, well, I didn't know I was paying taxes. I didn't know that I was paying $65,000 for each guy to be in prison? Really? That's my tax money? You know, people would be shocked if they heard that, if they really understood what it meant.
They would. They would. They would. So, wow. So it's so important this work around prison reform, around reentry, and all the things that people need to be able to
Exactly.
be
Exactly.
productive.
So all of these things that we've talked about sound simple
Yeah.
because they are manageable. And they are humane. I don't want to forget that you said humane, and I was being ridiculous about it. But it's important for us to know that some of these individuals ended up going to a facility when they were 18 years old, 17 years old. And they don't know what's going to happen to them when they're released.
It's true. It's true. So many folks who are homeless and who may have had some form of housing. I can't tell you during the COVID period how many people I've spoken to who've said they've lost their parent, their loved one, whomever they were staying with, is no longer here. because of COVID. And
Right.
so their stability, their connection is now gone. And or were people being evicted because because of income and so forth during COVID. So the COVID really impacted, and people are grieving the loss of a loved one that they couldn't mourn because they're
Right.
incarcerated.
Right.
And if it's your mother, your sibling, whomever, your loved one, your friend,
Right.
and you're now grieving while you're incarcerated and you're on lockdown, and now you also have lost your connection to the community or stability.
Right.
Now, what are you going to do? You're stuck. So I'm so grateful that, again, that there's an aggressive move right now via our current Mayor Wu and other state representatives who are looking at housing, who are looking at long-term programming, who are looking at how do we tap into pools of money in this infrastructure and recovery from COVID,
Right.
to be able to make sure that these populations who have long been undisturbed and marginalized, who are now at just beyond crises, it's a state of emergency.
Right.
It really is a state of emergency, who are recognizing it as such and are being able to mobilize resources. And we've got empty lots, all across the city of Boston that the city owns. There's so much that we can do. I believe there's one women's reentry program, New Beginnings, that is in Dudley, that got a lot of pushback, not in my backyard, but
Right.
it is there.
Right.
But we need more. I believe it's the only reentry program for women. So,
I know. But Dudley is part of Boston.
Oh, forgive me. No longer Dudley. Now we call it Nubian Square.
Nubian, I know.
I got to get that in my own head.
But I know it is Dudley. When you said Dudley, I knew it right away.
Yes.
Because I have shopped in Dudley and I've walked the streets of Dudley. But and I do know that it's been changed to Nubian. But the fact of the matter is that it's still a part of Boston.
That's right. Yes, it is.
That's the important part, that
Yes.
it's part of Boston.
Right.
And all of the things that we've talked about, everything you've mentioned, everything that I've supported of your mention, has been critically important, and we want to support the elected officials who are working
Yes.
for it, and we also want to, you mentioned that the mayor has been threatened, her life has been threatened.
Absolutely. Death threats, unfortunately.
That's incredible.
Rachel Rouse.
I didn't hear that before. So I think we want to be sure that her safety is maintained.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. We've got 3 minutes, Deacon, believe it or not.
That's amazing. That is just amazing.
Pastor.
You can take your mask off, Pastor Bruce. Yes, I want people to know who you are. Welcome.
Oh, you just invited me in.
Hey, you're always welcome.
I am so happy. One of the questions that I had, not pertaining to anything you both said, because you both said a lot, and it was a very interesting conversation. I was listening to it out there. I would have to say that Pastor Hobbs is a great guest to have on your broadcast. But I want to ask you a question, because we only have 2 minutes to go. I was here last week as your guest.
Yes.
What you said? What? He got good.
Pastor Hobbs.
He wants to make sure that your face is clear.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
So Pastor Hobbs is also here as your guest today. So if you were to be honest and analyze both of us, could you tell me which of the two guests you would prefer to have on your broadcast?
Why would you do that?
Wow. Well,
Put him on the spot like that.
Yeah, no, I have no reason to answer that because Pastor Hobbs has not been on my broadcast as often as you have. You and I did broadcasting out of Boston for several years together.
Right, we have synergy. We have a connection.
A long time.
You don't really have that kind of connection with Pastor Hobbs. You don't. I mean, he comes on, he answers your questions, he's articulate, he has a wonderful hat on today. But you and I have a connection. So that's all. That's all I was trying
I
to
know,
say.
but he and I have been in the facility together, and we have talked to people who are incarcerated. We have interviewed people. We've asked them to fill out applications. He's brought the applications from City Hall.
So he's trying to encroach upon our working relationship, and you're my friend, so
Mm-hmm.
you have to remain my friend, and you can't let him.
He's territorial, huh?
You can't let him try to steal. What was he saying?
Eric's in the background saying,
that he's my friend as well. So actually,
We don't have a full screen, so he can't come in.
right.
But Pastor, the truth of the matter is that my friend is Bruce Wall.
Thank you.
My friend is
Yeah.
Franklin Hogg.
Thank
And my friend is Eric Kennedy.
can share.
Okay, I'm willing to share.
Pastor.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'll be back next week, and you'll be back next month.
Okay, looking forward to it.
And Pastor Wall will be back next week.
He can't wait.
I'll be your guest.
Yeah.
I can't wait. I can't
No,
wait.
you won't be my guest. You'll be my co-host.
Oh yes, I'll
You
be a
won't be
co-host.
a guest,
That's
you'll
right.
be a
That's true.
co-host.
That's better, right?
So I'll see you. I'll see you next week, Pastor. You
I'll
can
be here.
You can be sitting in that chair.
I'll be right here, and my mask will be off, my coat will be off. I'll be ready to
That
go.
will be great. That will be great.
And I won't be like Pastor Hobbs and call Nubian Square Dudley Station.
Well,
Bye.
I see you next week,
Boy, do I look
everybody.
like a senior.
See you next week.
Boy, do I look like a senior.
Bye.